the family. We have 2 lectures this week, pretty standard length. So, what exactly defines a family? I used to use a video clip from Sesame Street talking about the family. Basically, it sums up any group of people living together and that loves one another is a family. I stopped using that video clip because it was kind of irritating to most people. So from the modern perspective, most people consider family to be people we live together and love one another. Well, to study it more scientifically, we do have to be more specific. The U.S. Census Bureau defines family as 2 or more individuals related by blood, marriage, or adoption living in the same household. Now, sociologists do get a little less specific than the census. The census is trying to do a very specific thing, namely counting people. And when you are counting that many people, you do need to be really specific. Sociologists usually define family as a social group whose members are bound by legal, biological, or emotional ties, or a combination of all 3. As sociologists, we fall somewhere between the U.S. Census Bureau and Sesame Street in terms of how we define the family. So let's talk about different types of families. First, we have the nuclear family. This is the quote-unquote classical, traditional American family. Nuclear family is defined as a heterosexual couple with 1 or more children living in a single household. This family type is still the majority of families in the United States. It's not the overwhelming majority anymore. At one time it was the overwhelming majority, but often when we talk about families and when families are depicted in media, we're talking about the nuclear family. An extended family, here are 2 terms that are easy to confuse. When sociologists are talking about extended families, we are talking about a large group of relatives, usually including at least 3 generations living either in one household or in close proximity with each other. When we talk about kin, we are talking about our relatives or relations who we are descended from common descent by. So when we're talking about extended family, we are not talking about your cousins. When you talk about your cousins, we're talking about your kin. Extended family, when sociologists talk about it, we are talking about a living situation. So if you live with your grandma and your parents, or if your parents live with you and you have kids, that is an extended family living situation. Interestingly enough, most typically in the United States we see immigrant families more often than other groups living in extended family situations. And there are a variety of socio-political reasons for that. Part of it is tradition. In many countries other than the United States, it is traditional to live in an extended family situation. Another thing is immigrant groups, no matter who they are, typically don't have that much money, so they're trying to save money. That's another reason we see that. So here are some descriptive terms. When we talk about endogamy, we are referring to marriage to someone within one social group. So within your race, within your class, your education, your religion, etc. When we talk about exogamy, we are talking about marriage to someone from a different social group. So yeah, if you would marry someone of a different race or a different religion, etc., same thing. Yeah, it's relatively straightforward. So from the time of slavery, though, through the 1960s, many states had anti-miscegenation laws. These laws prohibited interracial marriage, cohabitation, or even sexual interaction. If you look back at the history of the laws regulating who people could have sex with in the United States, it's rather sordid, and it's very long. While mixed-race families are now common, it was absolutely forbidden prior to the 1960s. There you see a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Loving. They actually were recently, I believe in 2016, depicted in a movie just called Loving. Their Supreme Court case was called Loving versus the state of West Virginia. And their case struck down anti-miscegenation laws in the United States. So LGBT families. LGBT people are increasingly choosing to raise children. Here we have a picture of me, my wife, and our friends Lauren and Anna with our daughters Madeline and Eloise. They've grown quite a bit since that picture, actually. But Lauren and Anna are now examples of a lesbian couple that has kids. The first question that is asked, a question that my grandmother once asked me, was, well, how did that happen? There had to be a man somewhere, right? Well, not necessarily. LGBT people can adopt children. They can have someone else carry a child for them. In the case of two men, they could have a woman be artificially inseminated and then carry that child for them. Or in the case of lesbians, artificial insemination is usually the preferred method because it is dramatically cheaper than surrogacy. And that's a couple ways that can happen. Let's get some more descriptive terms for family. Monogamy is the practice of marrying or being in a relationship with one person at a time, and this is still considered the only legal form of marriage in most modern Western cultures. Polygamy, then, is a system of marriage that allows people to have more than one spouse at a time and is practiced among some subcultures around the world, but not widely acknowledged as a legal form of marriage in, again, national societies. We do see polygamy among fundamentalist Mormon sects, not all Mormons certainly, but in certain extremist factions, polygamy exists. We also see polygamy in areas of the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia. In addition, where else? And polygamy existed in Europe in medieval times as well. And polygamy is so common, actually, in world history that we do have two different terms for it. So polygyny refers to a system of marriage that allows men to have multiple wives. This is the more common form of polygamy. Polyandry, on the other hand, is a system of marriage that allows women to have multiple husbands. Those systems have existed, but they have not existed as often. So let's talk about those three core sociological perspectives and the family. The structural functionalist views the family as one of the basic social institutions that keeps society running smoothly. It does this by providing functions such as producing and socializing children, economic production, instrumental and emotional, and also sexual control. So from a purely functionalist standpoint, families make kids, families are often the basis of small businesses, and families, they raise children as well. In addition, families serve a certain control on sexuality. In a more traditional society, the only sex that would be happening within the family unit. That's one element of that. But also, knowing who you are related to keeps incest from happening, right? So if you know who your cousins are, you know who your siblings are, you can keep from having sex with your relatives, and that keeps birth defect rates down. Conflict theorists, then, believe that society revolves around the conflict over scarce resources. By this point in the course, that should sound really repetitive. And Conflict within the family is also about competition for resources. The conflict within the family is about conflict for time, namely leisure time, energy, and the ability to do the recreational activities that you want to do. Symbolic interactionists examine the types of social dynamics and interactions that create and sustain families by emphasizing the ways that our experience of family bonds are socially created rather than naturally existing. So the symbolic interactionist would argue that you don't inherently love your grandmother, or you don't inherently love your siblings. These interactions are based in these relationships are based out of action, and by the frequency of having positive relationships with your family members, then that is what caused the bonding. It wasn't because you're related by blood to them. With that said, there is some science, a significant amount of science, to show that biological links do exist between parents and their children, but the symbolic interactionist would add that a whole lot more is also in there. Now let's talk about parents, or spouses to that matter. Although we see the mate selection process as a highly individual choice, this is a prime example of an element of your life that is actually heavily dictated by society. So what dictates this decision? Many things, but these two examples are they're major examples of how your life is impacted by the society around you, namely homogamy and propinquity. Homogamy means like marries like. This is demonstrated by the fact that we tend to choose mates who are similar to us in class, in race, in ethnicity, age, religion, education, and to a degree levels of attractiveness. What does this mean in our common language? We say things like, well, we have so much in common, or well, we didn't have anything in common, right? That's what that looks like. That's how we choose our mates. And if you have things in common, it's because you are a similar kind of person as that person. Propinquity, then, is the tendency to marry or have relationships with people in close geographic proximity than you. To put it very simply, even despite our modern era, you can only really have children with people if you are in close proximity with them 99% of the time. So, this is a different topic. Many types of work, both paid and unpaid, are necessary to keep a family operating. These tasks can be either instrumental or expressive. Instrumental tasks refer to practical physical tasks necessary to maintaining family life, such as washing the dishes or cutting grass. Expressive tasks then refer to emotional work necessary to support family members, such as remembering a relative's birthday or playing with kids. In our American society, on a traditional level, men have been given instrumental tasks more often. Women have been getting expressive tasks more often. Since about the mid-90s, this has been dramatically changing in society, but it is still a social dynamic that very much exists. This is just a reiteration of what I just said. Men and women have always performed different roles to ensure the survival of their families, but those roles were not considered unequal until after the Industrial Revolution. That's actually a really good point. I'm glad I didn't miss. What we think of as men's work and women's work is largely based out of the fact that when men moved off the farms and into factories, then women became responsible for what happened in the home. Prior to that, much of the work that was considered during the industrial age women's work, well, in the agricultural age, was just general work, right? And so that was aggravated during the Industrial Revolution. And now that we have moved past the Industrial Revolution, regardless of the three wave of feminism that we have had, that work is becoming mixed sex work again. It's an interesting phenomenon. If our economy hadn't been changing, would uh, fair separation of jobs in a sex way be happening or not? We don't really know, but it's an interesting question. Now, one issue that we have to deal with is the second shift, and I'm pretty sure I covered this when I talked about gender and sexuality. Please excuse me, but I'll go over it again. That second shift is unpaid labor inside of the home and is often expected of women after they get home from work, after working an entire day of paid labor. The best alternative to eliminating the second shift, as I know I did mention before, is to share it. It can't be eliminated. Leaves have to be raked. Kids need to be taken care of if you have kids. But especially you men out there who are with ladies, get your butt up and wash some dishes. Okay, that is it, and I hope to see you soon.